It's a Friday, and this is the edition of Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90, where we review the major events of the week. I have a panel here in studio to focus mainly on what happened in the NRM National Delegates Conference, which happened over the last 3 days. Now, we know delegates of the National Resistance Movement were at Kololo ceremonial grounds, where they met, discussed a number of issues, but also elected new leaders of the Central Executive Committee, which is the supreme body of that political party. That meeting at Kololo followed another one which was held of the National Executive Committee, where the aspirants were introduced and given an opportunity to speak. You all followed. Maybe if you didn't, there was that sharp exchange between two contenders for the position of the second national vice chairperson woman, between the Honorable Rebecca Kadaga and Right Honorable Anita Among. And at the end of the day, when the ballots were cast, of course, by lining up, they were not ballots. When people lined up at Kololo, over 90% voted for Anita Among. But there is a lot of discussion there, given what the Honorable Rebecca Kadaga actually said. But also, we saw other people losing out in this particular process. People like the Honorable Mike Mukula, Dr. Chris Baryomusi, Lydia Wanyoto, Major General Jim Hwezi, and others who somehow pulled out of this race, saying they had seen certain things they didn't want to associate with. We also saw another key issue was the youth election, where the son of the current chairman of the NRM Electoral Commission, Dr. Tango Doi, that's Collins Tanga, was elected, but the youth rejected him, and the matter has been referred to the NRM tribunal, who will decide. Another election that did not take place was the leadership of the Entrepreneurs League, where there was accusation of corruption and hiding of delegates. Some people have even indicated that delegates were switched. You know, a lot has been talked about what happened in this particular delegates conference. Issues to do with money and bribery came to the fore. Some leaders are accusing the chairman of the party for failing to tackle this particular problem. There's been an issue of, people saying the NRM party is in transition. Some people think others were eliminated, targeted and eliminated. So there's a lot of discussion going on. But the bigger question would be, what is the implication on this political party going into this election? But also some people are saying what is likely to happen in a general election if the ruling party has conducted its internal process in this manner. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. 4 panelists this evening. Mr. Nicholas Opio, a renowned human rights lawyer, pundit on human rights and governance issues. Good evening, Nicholas. It's a pleasure having you at Spectrum Extra.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and to join the show with your distinguished guests. Good evening to all the listeners.
It's a pleasure having you. Retired Major Paula Awich, Director of External Affairs, NRM Secretary. She's a lawyer and also a human rights defender. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure having you on Spectrum Extra.
Thank you so much, and greetings to my colleagues who are here, and greetings to the viewers as well.
Miss Charity Kalebo, she is Executive Director, Elections Laws Institute, pundit on governance. She's also a seasoned election observer. Good evening. It's a pleasure having you on Spectrum Extra.
A very good evening to all our listeners, and good evening to fellow panelists. Happy to be here.
Our fourth panelist, Dr. Robert Ojambo, Senior Lecturer and Head of the History Department, Archaeology and Heritage at Kyambogo University. He's also a political analyst. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for taking part in this discussion.
Good evening, Kenneth. I'm seated amidst lawyers. So today I may live here with some law in my head.
It's a pleasure having you.
It's the learned people.
Yes.
The rest are instructed.
Learned friends.
Yes.
And Dr. Jambo, I want to begin with you on this particular issue. You followed closely what happened in the processes the NRM have just gone through. Let's hear your initial thoughts on that process and what it means for this political party.
Yeah, I gave a comment last year in January when they had just started the process of registering the NRM members. And the story then was that they wanted to avoid the problems that had been there in the last previous years. And they thought that registering digitally was going to solve the problem. And when the results came out, I was shocked that their voters, NRM voters, were almost more than the voters of the Electoral Commission, and I was wondering how can this be? How can NRM have more voters than all the voters in Uganda? And it said that this is a recipe for chaos. We are just lucky that nobody died at Kololo up to yesterday, but that is something that NRM needs to look into, because there is no way you can gather 24,000 people to just get the top acclaim. I think they need to learn. I saw them, they invited a lot of other parties, NC, they invited RP, is it RP what? The one of Rwanda, RPF, and many others. I think they need, because like CCM also has almost the same structure like the one NRM has. But they do things differently. When you look at the SEC of NRM, it is a semblance of the high command of NRA or UPDF. And they would have picked a leaf from there. There is no way you can get a high command through that crowd. And above all, people lining up, and it's terrible. In 2025, it really depicted something. So my suggestion to them, they need to restructure that electoral process so that by the time people come to the delegates conference, they are just bringing names for approval. That's what CCM does. They are bringing names which have already been sieved to get the 17 cream of NRM. Somebody should not be coming from Kapela Biong or Bugulumbia or wherever in the village there to come and vote, even people they don't know. I've asked Kitawich here, and I think he's going to continue giving me an answer. You are saying that this one is a national vice chairman representing, or a member of SEC representing Karamoja. Why should a member of SEC representing Karamoja be voted by people of Kabale? Because I heard when the man was talking about issues of Karamoja, they were talking about cattle rustling and so on. Why don't we get these people already having chosen their person to only come for delegates conference for approval?
So NRM members in Karamoja sit down, elect their
representative.
Okay.
And that
And
representative only is brought for approval, because he is for the interest of Karamoja. When I asked, they told me that, but when he's voted, he becomes national. Then why don't you just call them SEC members? Why do you say this one is for Karamoja, this one is for Buganda, this one is for Kampala? Because the interests of people of Kampala is not the same as the interests of people in Rukungiri. No. Here they are talking about taxes, they are talking about urban issues. In the other place, they are talking about seeds, they are talking about cows and other things. So I think that one needs to be reformed. Number two, there was a huge complaint that there were so many fake voters. Because the verification process later failed, I saw women fighting for a list of verification until I think the leadership just said, allow everybody to go and vote. So there are people who voted there who are not supposed to be delegates, because you can't bring masses and you don't have ability to control those masses and be sure that Ojambo is a delegate or not a delegate. That's why, for example, the youth elections became very complicated, because even just to confirm that these people who are here are youth is a problem. Because according to their definition of a youth is somebody 30 below. Now, how do you determine that? It's quite difficult. Do you need to check all their records?
IDs.
National ID, let me tell you, can change any time depending on what interest I have. In this country, we don't have yet a watertight. And that's why, for example, when you are going for a driving permit, you fill a new form. When you are going for I don't know what, you fill a new form. And when you put in wrong information, there is doubt that it will tell you that this information is wrong. So there is still a problem there. But lastly, The other thing about the NRM, and which we have all seen, is selective elections. Some people are comfortable to go. In fact, you cannot say unopposed, but for them they are sole candidates, and others, any group can stand against them. So I feel that they need to reform. They need to reform their things so that when they want, for example, if you don't want chairman and other people to compete, make it so that people don't even contemplate of coming. Because you remember the other man who wanted to compete, in fact there were two, and the NRM secretariat could not photocopy the nomination forms, and they were told to come on Friday. When they came on Friday, they were given in the morning, and the nomination closed later. So I think those are things which should be done somewhere else, not at the top echelon of the party.
All right.
And because of that, the confusion you see at the NRM election or other elections is what is going to happen in the national elections. Because if you went to Kololo, majority of the vehicles there were red number plates. So these are the people later who form a government, and many of them are even state they're public servants, like the other DCs. So at the end of the day, the same confusion. That's where I get worried. Because why would I get worried about NRM election? Because I'm not a member of NRM. I'm not a party person. I wouldn't be worried. But I'm worried that these people, as disorganized as they were, looking on TV, if you watched TV, they are going to carry that disorganization to the national services in the country. No wonder we have potholes, we have poor elections, schools are collapsing. So you don't expect those people to get organized and run a state, and the state functions properly.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jambo. Let's now come to Charity. Let's hear your initial thoughts before we get deeper into the issues. Very quickly, your reaction to what transpired in the NRM National Delegates Conference.
So, of course, Kenneth, the NRM National Delegates Conference can be summarized in that one word that Professor Odiambo has also referred to. He's not yet professor, are you now?
Very soon.
The elections there were chaos. Chaos. You see, Kenneth, every time I see injustice, I'm incensed. I'm indignant. The reason for being incensed and indignant is only 2 or 3 reasons. It seems comfortable for those who peddle evil. Bribery is evil. It is as evil as corruption. Now, the NRM looks like it is a comfortable zone. It's all right, we can bribe and move away with it, but this is the real reason why the moral fiber of Uganda has gone down. If you look at our constitution, okay, and you look at Article 17E, it calls on every Ugandan to defend Uganda. To defend Uganda, to defend the values and the principles of Uganda. Do we have values? NRM does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within a country called Uganda. And he has just told you, they are going to export their bad manners, the bribery, the theft, the corruption. These were the issues that were in that election. Forged accreditation cards, delegates without valid identity cards, missing names on the voters' register, delegates transported at a cost of 1 million. Where was 1 million coming from to pay every delegate? 23,000, over 23,000 delegates, and you're paying each of them 1 million for just showing up because you're going to take them to hotels that they are rich people, that this NRM party is so loaded, it has so much money. Kenneth, we need to sit down as a people. We have seen a cross-section of leaders cry out at different points. Kadaga has come as a last-minute cry. We saw a judge who cried when she was in Mlago and she could not access medicine for her husband. The man died. We've seen the Honorable Kadaga saying we had values, we had principles. Of course, that was Justice Irene Muriagonya. I didn't want to name people, but it is the fact. We have seen Mike Mukula stepping down and saying there was a lot of malpractice and says this is against the historical spirit of the NRM. But I'm even asking, does the NRM actually have a historical or even physical spirit? Because at least the 1995 Constitution does have a spirit. But the NRM, as it looks right now, does it even have a spirit? Do they even have morals? Do they even have a standard? Do they even have ground on which they can begin now to boast how they run government and how they say they are the governance system of this country? What kind of governance are we espousing? What kind of leaders have we got just because we must bribe our way on top? We must bribe our way to the chairs in which we are. So the people from upcountry came, and all they did in Kololo, Kenneth, was to ask, who am I supposed to vote for? Because they had been paid. They did not even decide on their own. They had no conscience to decide who is going to govern them, who is going to lead them, what are the values, what are they, what is the agenda they are bringing on table, what are the things they are going to stand, which will defend them who had come from upcountry. Their question was one, who do I vote for? They give you a name, and you go and line up. Now, the Honorable Rebecca Kadaga asked a very interesting question to the Electoral Commission of NRM. She asked them, are we going to have screens across showing the voting such that there is transparency in this process? And is it going to be regions or sub-counties? And at first, Tanga Odoi was hesitant to give the full process until the president badged and said, no, tell us, is it sub-county? Is it regions? Is it districts? And he said, I wish they had told us earlier. We should have come out with a proper program and told everybody what was going to happen. And then he also said that, look here, screens are going to be everywhere. But from everything we saw from Kololo, we saw people being told, you are here, vote for so-and-so, we have $10,000 for you. We are talking dollars, we are not talking shillings. Kenneth, us who write projects, the small projects we write, we actually write for $15,000, even $20,000. Somebody just carried that, $10,000, and gave it to delegates in Kololo. And some of this money, they themselves have come out to say, was borrowed money. Who has this kind of money that they just go waving around? The NRM has embarrassed Uganda. The NRM has embarrassed young people. The NRM has embarrassed people who have values, people who stand for principle, people who know that elections are supposed to be guided on principle, that elections are supposed to produce people of high moral fiber. The NRM has taught this nation that the upcoming elections are going to be chaos, they're going to be confusion, and they're going to be anger-based. We saw fights right there in Kololo. We saw people fighting, we saw people not agreeing, we saw money exchange hands, we saw others stepping down and calling on the national chairman to investigate the malpractices in the process. If we continue to condone evil, as a country, we are headed for an abyss.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we still have to hear from Mr. Nicholas Opio and also retired Major Awich Pola, who are also here in studio. But keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. Today, we are looking at what transpired during the NRM National Delegates Conference, a number of issues coming to the fore, and we're trying to make sense of what this means for this political party as we go into the next election. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week, but we are focusing on the happenings at the NRM National Delegates Conference, which was held this particular week. The panel We have Dr. Robert Ojambo, Senior Lecturer and Head of Department. That is History and Archaeology, plus Heritage at Chambogo University. Is also a political analyst. Ms. Charity Kaleo, she's the Executive Director, Elections Laws Institute, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights, Pandit on Governance and Election Matters. She's also a seasoned election observer. Also in studio, retired Major Awich Pola, who is the Director of External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat, lawyer and human rights defender. Now we want to hear from Mr. Nicholas Opio. You have also followed closely what happened, and you are a bit familiar with issues to do with the elections in this country. If you can tell us briefly your own thoughts on what transpired in the NRM Delegates Conference.
No, first, I think you must acknowledge that unlike other political parties in this country, the NRM has taken a path of a popular internal electoral process. It may have gone terribly bad, but the principle that they have attempted to, in a democratic, popular process, arrive at its leadership is something you must underscore, because the Constitution requires parties to conform to democratic principles in their internal governance. So we've seen them struggling from flag bearers and now to the National Delegates Conference, the elected members of SEC and new leaders of the party. That process is a process every party must attempt to have to be able to be connected to the electorate. There are many reasons why the other parties don't have that process. One of them, of course, that nobody allows them the kind of largesse that we saw the NRM have in Kololo. If they try to organize small district functions, they are dispersed by the police. I think I saw one today in Mitiana of PPF or PFF, whatever that name is.
PFF, yeah.
Very confusing for those of us of the
People's
of the
Front
Penicillin
for
era.
People's Front for Freedom.
Yes.
PFF.
They are dispersed. The leaders are arrested. Noop is a perennial victim of that sort of process. And so while you want them to have a popular process resembling that of the NRM, you must underscore as well the difficulties that they face. Now, the NRM process, the attempt at a popular democratic process for internal governance, really has run into major problems. You can say it's a learning curve, but it's run into major problems, many of which are self-inflicted. In the sense that while they wanted to give a veneer of a democratic process, that process was very far from a democratic process. It is a process that was marred by anything but democratic practices. So there's a pretense of a popular electoral process, but really it wasn't. From party primaries, these elections have been characterized by bribery, violence, in many cases manipulation, and you can't have an electoral process where the entire NEC is campaigning and also conducting the election. The principles of a democratic practice has still eluded them, even though they are yearning to get it. And so that process that then went to Kololo is a reflection of the difficulties they were struggling with between the NRA and a multi-party system that they now have to have a popular process. I hope that the other parties can be given space and time to try and experiment this process. Because from it we learn. If the NRM doesn't learn anything, at least those of us who are observing from outside are learning from their experience on how to conduct internal party processes. The second thing is this, and I've said this elsewhere, it got me a lot of problems, that the process by which a snake sheds off its skin. You know what that process is called?
No idea.
Acidiasis. The acidiasis process is a process where the snake begins to bang its head on the rock to begin the process of peeling off all skin, so that by the time the old skin is peeled off, it looks like an entire snake, has crawled out of its own skin. And these processes, what you saw happening in NRM, that the snake the constant factor in the NRM party chairman and his vice were involved in a process similar to equidiasis, so that the old skin has been shed off, right? You have a new neck now, many of whom many years ago were not even members of the NRM. Okay, the snake has been given a new lease of life, that they can now embark on a process of hunting, of being reinvigorated and given a sense of newness. And so people like Lydia Wanyoto, Chris Biaromosi, Jim Muwezi are old skin that the snake has shed off. They now must find new roles and find new identities in the body politic of Uganda. You can blame them, people like Kadaga, for not reading the Times. I think at one point she said, it is my right to be in this position. The sense of entitlement, I think they misread the Times and thought that they were as constant a factor as the snake itself. They forgot they were the skin that
they were the skin
off. And so found themselves in this embarrassing situation, that you have somebody who has, for many people, is responsible for the current mess we are in, having to face a person who herself is divisive in the Speaker of Parliament. And I'm using divisive to be very polite here, because if Kadaga had read the Times, she would never have subjected herself to that humiliation. This process is a process tainted by irregularities, tainted by illegalities. Doctor just mentioned the vast majority of civil servants taking part in a partisan political matter. But the first meeting of this process began from State House. That the members of NEC were meeting in a tent at State House in a political partisan process. So you then begin to have this thing about the fusion between the state and the ruling party. And perhaps that's where we find the mess, because it seems that the party internal process is a precursor to running the state, having access to the till. I mean, having access to the honeypot. Okay, you have this contestation that's near life and death, because if you don't get it, then you are not on the table. Okay, NEC is supposed to be a think tank to advise the president. It's not a paid position. There are no perks for being in NEC. At least formally. Sorry, SEC. The one
Central Executive
Central
Committee.
Executive
That
Committee.
one, SEC. They're just advisors. They don't have offices. They don't have a car. They have no salaries. But you see the contestation being very hot, because the informality allows that place to be the clearinghouse for many things that is happening in government. Don't forget that these guys, when they win elections, they think they're running an NRM government, not a government of Uganda. When you win elections, you're governing for everybody, including the ones who don't like you, who voted against you. But you have a whole party structure sitting in cabinet in the Republic of Uganda. The fusion of state and party creates first bigger problems for the governance of the country, but creates this combustion you're seeing in the NRM. And I think that is only going to get more intense. The fighting, people are going to bring the daggers, because it's a matter of life and death for many of them. Your life can change dramatically if you leave that small cohort that determines. And it is the exact thing that you see here, that a Speaker of Parliament, supposed to be a third co-equal branch of government leader, supposed to lead everybody in Parliament, fighting for a partisan position, saying, I'm going to enact your policies, I'm going to enact your wishes.
I'm going to mobilize.
Mobilize for the party. You can then, you see that sort of fusion, blurring the line between agencies of government and a ruling party that's in power. And that's dangerous for this country, because in the end, you are going to get to a Tanzania situation. There's a pretend of multi-party, but in fact there's a de facto one-party state, where party functionaries work for the party in power, where elections are merely a formality to gain legitimacy on the international scene, not a means to gain legitimacy with the population or get the wishes of the population, expressed through their franchise. And that's exactly where we're heading. We're heading to Tanzania, pretense of multi-party politics. Where your opposition friends spend their time in jail during election. Tindo Lusu is in jail right now as we speak. So is Kiza Besigye, and I can tell you between now and elections, other opposition leaders who will be in jail or will have court cases against them. That is where I think we are at, and I think it's bad for this country. I hope and pray that the less radical group in the NRM, like my brother Paula, who is widely exposed, because you see, the Speaker of Parliament is not exposed, and you can excuse her, but I cannot excuse a witch here, who has been a UN top quasi-judicial officer. President from Kadogo to top UN, he's exposed. He has seen things around the world. Okay, he's not excitable. So, so moderates like him, I hope, can have their voices heard, and begin a process of running a proper political party.
All right. It's good that it's Major Witch who is next. Let's hear his view on this, whether he thinks you're massaging his ego or...
No. I'm being honest with him.
Major
he
Witch.
knows there are matters we disagree, and I tell him in his face. But there are things I know that he's fairly exposed, fairly sophisticated, well-read. I suggested jokingly on social media that NRM should change the mode of electing their second vice chair for women. I'd ask them to write an essay. Because I know one cannot even write a comprehension.
There's a newspaper which ran a headline actually where it was saying that the queens were fighting for the attention of the king. Let's hear from,
that was the headline.
That was the headline. But let's hear from Major Awich. How do you explain these things to Ugandans and your other members who were not in Kololo, or when they hear this kind of information coming out, issues of bribery, intimidation, switching of delegates, etc. It's just astonishing to say.
Thank you so much. I'm struggling to answer directly what you are asking, and also see if I can package it in content to what my other colleagues have said.
You have the floor.
So, because my colleagues have said many things which needed reply to. For example, there was a mention of a transition, which is also Nicholas talked about the knowledge of the snake removing its skin. To me, there wouldn't be anything wrong with a snake. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that, because you see, right from childhood, we used to read very strong and hard literature, including dialectical materialism and historical materialism. And we would find there that one of the laws of social development is the unity and the struggle of opposites. And it is inherent in all phenomena. And therefore, a society is dynamic and not static. It would therefore it shouldn't surprise that in NRM, the young come and the old goes. So that is a dynamicity of society which we can't run away with. Now, if it is similar to a snake shedding off its skin, there it be. And you can see that since if you talk of NRM in generality, meaning you are talking of the NRM, which was a political system before a referendum, and now, because sometimes you use the word interchangeably, but the doctor will say it is one and the same anyway. So if you talk of that, you can see that we have had list of leaders that have fallen, that have led and left, from vice president to prime ministers to ministers. If you call former ministers now, there are many, including leaders as chairman, LC5 and the rest. So it shouldn't surprise anybody there that leaders come and go, because we live in a dynamic society.
I think what matters is how they go. That seems to be the issue on the floor. The process of having these leaders actually leave, when it is tainted by allegations of corruption, bribery, intimidation, etc. Surely that's
why I told you that I was trying to package what you have asked plus what they have said. I will definitely answer that. Now, there's also mention about foreign guests. I don't know whether the person who mentioned thought it was a bad thing. But for us in NRM, we think that we live in a, first of all, one of our core principles is Pan-Africanism. And therefore, we also think that we don't live in isolation. And therefore, that is why you would see in Kololo many parties that we think are progressive parties who are partners. We link up with them to share experiences. And that's why we call them to come and see what we do. Like if you're saying there's so many bad things, we would hear from them and they also advise us. Actually, I'm the one who was the architect on implementing that position of identifying and implementing,
I saw you receiving them at the airport.
inviting foreign guests. So we think that it exposes our transparency, and therefore they can advise us because we have forum where we meet, but also we learn from them. Now, there's also the issue of SEC regional, because there's a concern that if you're being vice chair for Karamoja, then why would the rest of the country elect you? I've told Doctor this again and again. If you look at the citation of that title, it's called vice chair, national vice chairperson, Karamoja. National vice chairperson, Karamoja. Meaning that this person is first a national vice chairman. Only that he hails from Karamoja. No, not represents Karamoja. It doesn't represent Karamoja. He's national vice chairman.
So let me ask you a question. Why don't we have national vice chairperson, national chairman Kiruhura?
It's because it was decided that it shouldn't go to a lower level, but regional enough. Okay? So if you went to Kiruhura, then it would be, you'll have so many vice chairmen. You'd have
No. I'm asking a specific question. Why didn't you also advise them to say national chairman Kiruhura?
No.
Because you said that the other one is national vice chairperson Karamoja, because the person comes from Karamoja. So we should also have national chairman Kiruhura.
No, but here it implies a region, not a village.
Well, maybe the answer lies in you explaining to us why NRM thought that they should have a national vice chairperson tagged to a region. Why?
Because there was need to have, we know the procedures in meetings. When the chair is not there, you have somebody should chair. In fact, our provision is that if even all the vice chair are not there, a SEC can pick one of them to chair. So to not to have vacuum or lacuna in chairing proceedings of the SEC, it was decided that the vice should be made more, and to have it more, therefore, it was good to have vice chair, but in a decentralized form.
I thought these leaders are on SEC to actually bring on board the issues from the regions that they represent. That's what one actually.
No, they are national vice chair, but they come from those areas.
Okay.
I don't know whether what I'm saying is so interesting or not that I'm being interviewed.
I find it intriguing.
Intriguing. Yes. So the other issue that was mentioned was how does SEC arrive at a point of the chair or vice chair being unopposed. You see, the rules of procedure is that SEC is like a court of record from High Court to Supreme Court, which can undo its own proceedings or rules. In other words, it has that important decision that it can decide by itself, whether consensus or voting. What happened is that the issue of a chair like that of Museveni and Kigongo was not a permanent thing that was decided that from today on they will not be touched. It was an agenda item which was discussed on its merits and disposed of. I was there. For example, the procedure is that if you're discussing Museveni, then Haji Kigongo chairs and Museveni steps out. Now that one is discussed and disposed of. So in this particular discussion, when it was passed that we resolved that Museveni is vetted. The term there is vetting, because SEC is supposed to vet. So Museveni was vetted. Now when it came to Haji Kigongo also, Kigongo was vetted in his own merit and passed. Now, the idea of saying that it was ring fence was not, because I remember General Tafire tried to argue that there should be a ring fencing for the three, including that of Kadaga. And his argument that is so little valid was that the elections are very versatile. Any of these other vice chair can lose. So if they lose, now that we already would have had the Chairman Museveni and Vice Kigongo and Kadaga, this would serve as institutional memory. And indeed, it was proved right, because many of them lost. So Tafire's argument is, colleagues, can we have this? Because this election is going to trace everybody. Okay.
All lost. If I may, you're talking about this now at the vetting level. We saw active attempts. We saw active attempts at blocking people who are aspiring for those positions, even before you go to vetting. People turned up to pick forms to contest for the chairmanship, and they were prevented from doing so. And many of them have raised this complaint publicly. And so if you say they were decided on their own merits, before you arrive at the vetting on merit, as you say, why would you block people who are merely expressing interest? You would think that that vetting process would present the candidates who have been nominated and taken to SEC for the vetting, so that they all contest for these ideas. Because the fact that you don't allow that is what gives the impression that this is ring-fenced. There's no competition against these two gentlemen.
Okay, now, there are two issues to that. One is that if there was any blocking, then it could have been done at that level by the individual officer, but that is not the position of the party, not even on the written one. But two, also many of them are mad with rumors, so to say, because whoever was affected did not take up a clear stand to seek remedies, that I have been blocked. So you are now having things which we can't verify for now, whether it was an indiscipline of whatever person who was holding the key at that time, or it's even rumors, because whoever was affected has not come out to say, look, I am blocked, and because there are remedies available to that, than somebody moving around on the street and say, you know, I was blocked, and we know who blocked you. Now, by the time we reached to vetting, the position was that the person who picked and returned was President Museveni. And we didn't have evidence that Mr. X came to pick and was blocked, or Mr. Y came to pick and block. So that's why I'm saying, if it did happen, that would be a misnomer by the individual office or person doing that, but that's not the party position. So therefore, the position of the chairman Museveni and the position of Kigongo were vetted in its own merit, and it was not ring-fenced, because the misinformation out there is that, you know, they have only ring-fenced two positions. They have only ring-fenced two positions. Indeed, the idea of ring-fencing came, but it was defeated. They said, no, we are not ring-fencing anything. Let's debate it on its own merit. And that is why Otafire's position, which to me was valid, because for him he was saying, Barium will lose, or who will lose, everybody will lose. So who will help us, gentlemen? Why don't we save three? And indeed it came to pass that all of them lost. Disability lost. Women lost. Workers, indeed one. Veteran, everything. And that was Otafire's argument, that we should ring-fence this for institutional memory. But the motion was defeated, and that should show you the democracy in SEC, that even a historical member like Otafire can argue his point and was defeated. That's what we call democracy.
But
now,
Major, you're actually being unfair to us, because we know very well there was a decision taken at Chove several years ago that when it comes to a man called Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, he will never be challenged for that position of SEC and the position of flag bearer. So you're being a little bit unfair to us.
that position which was taken in SEC, I mean, that you announced, is a position that I told you that SEC, like any court of record, can undo its own decision. It came up. Now, if that position was binding there is no way we would have gone through even Museveni picking nomination, expression of interest. Because once you already decided as a candidate, do you need to express interest again? Do you have to return a form again? Do you have again to go for vetting? No. Whatever decision was taken, I wasn't there, but it was disregarded and processes went as per law. Processes went as per law. So the other thing you have said is, somebody mentioned is, does NRM have values? We definitely have values.
No.
We are very, very high valued people. Why? Even in instrument that should guide in values, the law, Charity, you're a lawyer, the law requires that every political party should, on top of having a constitution, should deposit with the Electoral Commission code of conduct. UPC simply says in the constitution, there shall be a code of conduct. It just mentioned that. The rest of the party, nothing. We are the only party with a registered, deposited code of conduct, and which shows sanctions on do's and do nots.
But
Do's
do you
and do
stick
nots.
by those
We
codes?
do. We stick.
Let me ask you, and then what's the difference between you and the UPC? You have it, you'd never use it. Because your people were complaining about corruption, and I know the NRM code of conduct is totally against corruption and use of money in elections. And it's something that your chairman has been speaking about for quite some time. But nothing has been done.
Kenneth, just to add on.
Do you want to tell us that there's going to be an investigation and repercussions for those people?
Kenneth,
who are using
just
the
to
money?
add on, Chris Bariomunsi is the Minister of Information and National Guidance. He stood on a microphone. I don't know whether Major Which is going to call this also rumors. He stood on a microphone before the chairman of SEC and said this election is a sham. And nobody argued. He said it's a sham, and for that matter, I am not going to participate in it.
I think we are mixing. Let's go for a break now. When we return, I'll give you an opportunity to actually continue with your submission so that you can wrap up by responding to the number of issues that the other panelists actually put across. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line. When we return, we'll sample some of them, but we'll also give an opportunity to retired Major Witch to conclude his remarks before we open up a full discussion on some of the key issues that made headlines during the NRM National Delegates Conference. Let's go for that break. Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We're focusing on the NRM National Delegates Conference. The guest this evening, Mr. Nicholas Opio, renowned human rights lawyer, pundit on human rights and governance matters. We have Ms. Charity Kalebo, Executive Director, Elections Watch, Elections Laws Institute, pundit on governance issues. She's also a seasoned election observer. Also in studio, Dr. Robert Ojambo, Senior Lecturer and Head of the History and Archaeology and Heritage Department
add a real PhD.
at Chambogo University.
Let's add this
And
is a
then
real
we
PhD.
also have retired Major Paula Awich, Director of External Affairs, NRM Secretary. Major Awich, you were on the floor before we went for a break, and you were concluding your point, responding to some of the issues that were put across. Please do go forward with your
I was
submission.
on the point of values because my colleagues have asked and have even said that NRM has no moral fiber and no values. I said that we have values, and I said ways of enforcing or determining values is first of all the institutional framework. Because you can't stand up and say, I have values in my stomach or in my heart or in my head. The institutional framework is, do you have documented documents that guide you, that if somebody falls short, it can be held accountable? Yes, I said we are the only party in Uganda with a written code of conduct. Even with institutional framework like courts, we have judicial system inside the court itself. And we have cases all over the country where party members have been put to hold by the respective court system of the party. So we have a lot of things that are do's and do nots. Now, if we are falling short in obeying our own set of rules of code of conduct, that happens in any society. How many penal code sections do we have in Uganda? And it is still broken every day and every day. So we have it. What matters is how do we tackle or how do we use it, this kind of code of conduct. of course, we're also aware that if you use the law to the letter, for example, we have clear offenses provided for, or prohibit what we call prohibited conduct, not offenses, prohibited conduct. But sometimes if you stick to it to the letter, you may end up breaking. So sometimes when we let it go, you say like we are not observing the code of conduct. But
All right.
even in courts of law, DPP pulls out some prosecutions.
All right.
We have seen DPP dropping.
To be fair to you, we would like to actually know what is in that code of conduct and whether it applies to some of the things that happened in Kololo, including bribery, intimidation. You know, we saw senior leaders, people like Dr. Chris Bariomosi, the Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, and the others who actually stood up and said, there's things that are going on here to the extent that I cannot put my integrity on the line to participate in these elections.
Yes, there are things which happen, like bribery. We have time and again complained about bribery, including the chairman himself. He has talked, he has guided us, he has warned us, he has done this. Bribery exists and we all condemn it, okay? But also the party members, in the heat of the emotions, especially when you are losing elections, some are tempted to make statements that go over and above, and which at some point, I think when they cool down and you put them to task to give evidence, they wouldn't give it. But bribery is also one of the prohibited conduct. Even use of bad language, okay, is one of the prohibited language. I mean, things. Supporting another candidate against a flag bearer is a prohibited code of conduct. In fact, others are punishable by dismissal from the party. So the list of prohibited conduct are very many,
All right.
including bribery. And some of us have even gone ahead to ask that if the son of Kagota Yoweri Museveni has really managed to bring a human face to the army, because compared to the past, the army is more domesticated than it was, why can't he prevail on corruption and or bribery in this case? We have called against about that, and he has responded by warning, by cautioning, and thinking we should unleash the code of conduct.
All right.
So
can you tell us whether this code of conduct is actually going to be applied? Because it implies, from your own words, there are leaders who were actually elected due to the bribery they were involved in.
From my own words, I said what?
You concurred that there was bribery.
That doesn't say. I'm saying you are mixing things.
No, I'm not mixing things.
Let me say it
I'm
again.
not mixing
what
things.
Is, what I'm saying
you
is,
say you have a code of conduct as a party, and you do admit that there was bribery in Kololo, which implies that there are some leaders who were elected due to that influence of bribery. So the question is there going to be action?
Get me really clear on bribery. Bribery, me have said it exists. I'm not even talking of Kololo only. I'm talking of bribery in structural elections, in flag bearer elections, everywhere. But if you confine me that I have said there was bribery, that is a distortion.
So there wasn't.
There is bribery throughout, from the structural election, from the grassroots. And that is why I'm saying we have called on the chairman to prevail. And I have said the chairman, to a big extent, has warned, has cautioned, has called all of us to order. But it is work in progress. So I am not only saying that I have seen corruption in Kololo, I'm saying it is a challenge that exists in the party, and possibly in the national election, not only in the party, even in national election. So it is a vice that is identified. Remember, we have had structural elections for leaders of the party. Then we came to flag bearers for the party. And now, Kololo is the last thing. But some of us started mentioning bribery, even at structural election. So it's
no,
not
I think
something
what Kenneth is struggling with is whether you agree they are beneficiaries of that practice in this last election.
This last election, at the moment, I can't say I even I saw bribery. Did you see it yourself? Did you see it? No, answer me. Did you see the bribery?
I did see it because I was not there.
Now, if you didn't see it and you expected me to see it,
I heard from the candidates.
Opio, did you see the bribery?
I heard from the
People who are
candidates.
being
Did you see Opio, the bribery?
I was in good. How can I see
So
things?
what did they tell you?
Whatever Bash Mukola
But at
complained
least
about
for me, I have
bribery.
a statement from the Honorable Mukula,
You know,
Mike Mukula,
you know what is
and
surprising?
he said the following words.
What did he say?
He said
What did he say?
that, however, the ongoing campaign process has regrettably been grossly compromised. The exercise has been marred by widespread corruption, open voter bribery, and reckless expenditure of huge sums of money to influence the delegates. The very same sentiment was raised by Honorable Kadaga, Rebecca Kadaga on the microphone. The very same sentiment was raised by Sanjay Tana. The very same sentiment was raised by the one you've just told me now, Chris Bariomunsi.
Chris Bariomunsi,
and the video clips we got from Kololo, where money. Why must it be money?
In fact,
Now,
Uhuru said that
say
he
this
had
again.
seen sacks of
I
money.
have said,
The deputy speaker talked about 5 billion shillings. A candidate spending 5 billion.
I have said and considered that in as far as bribery is concerned, we have noticed from the structural election, from the flag bearer election. Now, Kololo is just a subset of it. It's a small thing because we're talking of a national thing from the grassroots.
So
If I have considered...
Kololo was the epitome.
If I have considered that we have watched this from structural elections, from flag bearer elections, and I have said we have called on the chair to prevail, I wonder what consciousness we want to draw and extract from here by emphasizing on Kololo. I have accepted the universal, and you are concentrating on the subset.
All right. So if you can conclude your remarks and we move on, Major Wich.
No, but you have given me little time.
There's a lot of-
I'm
there's a
answering
lot of
three
time.
people. I'm answering three people.
You have a lot of time.
No,
You are
so
protected.
now, the other thing is, there's the issue of democracy which was raised, that people are coming from up country to vote on people they don't know. Well, yes, this is the democracy that you want. And some of us have always said, they say, remember, we have moved from the NRM that was to this one. And this is the challenge that we meet. Okay? So that is what it entails democracy, that you have to, the presumption is that you have persuaded people. Doctor, there was a research done in Germany about whether or not the power given to the people is right, or some people should decide. And some people in the German parliament were saying, no, we should decide, the people don't know. So they commissioned a research, stand on the street of Berlin and tell a German that we are moving a petition to government because this government has refused to make the sun move from the west to the east. The sun is always moving from the east to the west. And you write your ID, people sign the petition. So these guys came back to parliament and said, you see, this is what you have been telling us, and we listen to the people. We stood on the street, people signed a petition that we should let government move sun from east to west. But that is what you call the democracy. So you should explain to the people. The presumption is that people who have come from Karamoja, who have come from Kisoro, you have explained to them. Now, if you say that they reach here and they're voting on what they don't know, but that is democracy. It is upon you.
All right, let's move on to the other panelists. And I want to go back to you, Dr. Ojambo, very quickly. You've heard from your colleagues around the table their initial thoughts and the issues they have brought out. We've also heard from Major Awich and the explanation. The fact that the NRM has a code of conduct, I think that's a very important thing to deal with, given the accusations that have emerged as a result of this election. But let's hear your thoughts again.
Of course, NRM having a code of conduct is just like another man having a rosary, and you find him stealing. When the rosary, you have to put it on after reciting the 10 commandments, and one of them, do not steal, but you find them stealing. So having a code of conduct and practicing morals are two different things, especially in the line of NRM. But that said, I just want to inform you that, for example, when you see this list, I liked how Council Opio gave it figuratively by that story of the snake. I think one of the biggest problems that affected these people was anger you know, we have been telling people that, you see, there is poor governance. And because of poor governance, people have a very serious problem, economically, socially. For example, in Uganda, you need to come to the university during examination, and you see how many people cannot afford to pay 600,000 a whole semester. 600. Our universities don't pay a lot of money, and some even bring their parents to beg the head of department to allow the students to go and do exams. People are selling their land and so many other issues. And there you are saying you are a SEC member, you are the policy maker. That is why everybody who presented himself for an election lost, because the people are very angry. Two, most of these people have been defending, like Major Wech is trying to do here. Bario Munsis, Mike Mukula was saying this country is almost heaven. The Jim Huezis, when they are given opportunity to speak. So the people have paid them in kind. They are saying, look, you have not been seeing these things, so please go away. Come and we do. And I'm telling all the other leaders, they are going to be shocked. And that's why their witches have to be a little bit clever and shelve the chairperson and the vice chairperson, because his explanation of ring-fencing these people is not very convincing. It's not convincing at all, because they know that tragedy, and he has just considered here that tragedy can befall them, and they go. Now, after having said that, there was a lot of controversy on the two positions of vice chairperson for the vice chairperson women, national vice chairperson women. And I have seen a lot of debates, some are against and some for Kadaga. But for me, I fail where to go. Because when you lay a bed, you must sleep on it. You don't lay a shabby bed and you expect other people to sleep on it, and for you continue sleeping on the other beds laid by other people. Two, they were saying...
Can you explain that analogy?
It
might be hard.
Let me tell you, there was one of the kings in the Bible called Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar used it to rear lions. And these lions used it to feed on his enemies. When you are captured as an enemy, they throw you in the den of lions to eat you. So one time they attacked him, and after defeating him, they said, what we are going to do to you is to take you to the den of lions. And he was crying loudest, forgetting that other people had been eaten by these lions. So the Kadagas of this world, and I'm not talking about Rebecca, I'm talking about the Kadagas of this world, are the ones who have built a system which is not fair, because when they were throwing away MPs on Tojikwatako, carrying them as if they are she was there. She was the speaker. In fact, she's the one who called the goons, who called those people. How dare she stand on a microphone and start crying that this is unfair? Does she know what unfair is? So for me, I cannot shed my tears there. Unfortunately, I don't have them. Some people are saying that the other speaker is using a lot of money. And I also got shocked. Why should a speaker of parliament be struggling to become a NEC member? A NEC member where, by the virtue of being a speaker, you are an ex-official of that NEC. And you see, these people need to be schooled. They are really ridiculing our country. As Opio said, Nicholas Opio said, Speaker is number 3 in this country. How can you be a number 3? Where, if the president, for example, in 2000, if we had not become very clever and we did not have elections, by constitution, the speaker was supposed to be the head of state if the term ended. Now, somebody who has that chance is still struggling for these small things of neck in a political party. I mean, SEC. What do you want in SEC? Nicholas has just said, this is not even a clear office. You are just, he called them think tank of the party. Why do you struggle to become a think tank and run around the country and so on? But above all, downgrading the position of a Speaker of Parliament. Wherever you come from, whether you are NRM, whether you are DP, whether you are UPC, once you become a Speaker, you are supposed to be non-partisan because you are a presiding officer. Now, this presiding officer even stands on the podium and says, I am going to make sure that all policies brought by my chairman are approved. My God, this is a terrible thing. Finally, I want to talk about this thing you have said, new blood is coming in and the old blood is going out.
The transition.
The transition. In Uganda, there have always been a transition of all leaders except one. If you check, the turnover of our members of parliament is over 60%. They change them. They transit. They remove the old ones. You remember the Agra Oris, his soul rest in eternal peace. By the time he died, he was not an MP. The Norbert Maos were there, the Winnie Byanyima were there, and many others. They have left. But the question is on one thing, and I normally associate it to a train. You can play around with the wagons and do anything to the wagons, and the train will continue moving. But once you touch, let me use the word head, but the engine,
the locomotive,
the engine of the wagon, that is the end. So in Uganda, what people are yearning for is not this transition of SEC members, is not transition of MPs, is not transition of ministers and so on. They want a change of government. Because in Uganda, historically, we know that there have never been a transition. Okay, the president has always been explaining, and I know Major Wich is going to use this to explain, that every 5 years there is an election. But the election, I've always told the listeners that this election is organized for only one person to win. And if anybody has anything to challenge me, you can bring it. The elections are organized in a way that anybody can lose, but the president cannot lose.
Charity, let's try to look forward. The NRM is going to an election, and we have seen what has happened from the time of the primaries. Now we have gone to the Xtra Executive Committee, and these things have happened. What do you think is the impact on this political party? Some people think they have new energy. Some people think they are going to lose. We had Kadaga actually warning and saying it's going to have repercussions in Busoga if she's ejected, the way it happened. What do you think is going to happen?
So, the Busoga question, maybe I first address my mind to that one. Busoga was demystified during the voting process, and we saw that the president responded fast about Busoga. He said he fought for the Busoga, and that he had been hearing that if Kadaga was eliminated, then he would lose votes in Busoga. But he's the one who fought for the Busoga. And we saw from the election results that there are places in Busoga that the Honorable Kadaga lost votes in. Although we cannot say for a fact that she lost or did not lose because there was money. Every time an election is tainted with money, and for me that is why today it was only one thing, money. Every time an election is tainted with money, you are swaying the mind of the voter. That voter is not making up their mind individually. They are just being swayed. Now, from what we have seen from the election, 2 elections have been postponed. Why? again because of electoral ills. The first election was the Entrepreneurship League. Although I must say that for the people that appeared on the microphone to the national chairperson, they argued and said these were allegations. And he who alleges must prove that indeed the delegates had been taken to these outside countries, so they had to bring this proof. Now, what we don't know from the NRM is actually is investigation taking place, and who is investigating? What is their credibility level? Because even from their primaries, the ones that they held before the national elections, they still have a backlog there. There are very many unresolved cases. And there are some cases that have been resolved and ended up with people saying, I'm going to stand as an independent because I'm not satisfied with what the commission asked me to do. And part of the problem has been that the commission they instituted, the lawyers,
The tribunal.
They demanded for evidence for the ills that the people who came complaining brought. So they wanted them to produce evidence, hard evidence, like a court system would be. So they were running a quasi-court system. I preferred if they had adopted arbitration. Arbitration is a process that would have two people who were aggrieved agreeing about the aggrievance and the areas of discontent. And then each of them coming up with evidence to show why they are aggrieved as to the process. Now, we are waiting to see what will happen to the Entrepreneurship League, and I suspect the president suspended this one because both of these major contenders, King Caesar and Basaja Balaba, they are both key investors. And he wants not to be seen to favor one against the other. Then the youth election, that one you saw for yourself. They have postponed it as well, saying there are irregularities there. There were fake delegates. That is what the young people said. And the president in his statement, he said, let's not discourage the young people. Let us have a clean process. So what is NRM going to do to prove there is a clean process for the Entrepreneurship League, to prove there is a clean process for the Youth Election League? Because if you suspend elections, then you should tell us what mechanisms have you put in place, what are the issues that you identified that led to the suspension. Don't just suspend. What were the issues? These are the issues. And this is how we've tackled issue 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is how the election is going to be conducted. Now, beyond the NRM election, we have seen that many of the people that came out of NRM have said they will stick with their party because they want to metamorphosize and serve in different political positions within the party. Of course, it is for their own personal interest. But for me, I look at the NRM who is government, the NRM that is leading on the question of governance, that they are coming into the election, the major election of 2026, where we are having nominations now happening, and they are going to come with the mindset of bribe. They are going to look for more money. So they've spent 5 billion for positions, 4 billion, 8 billion. Now they have to go back and look for another 2 billion, which they're going to bring into the other election. Where is it coming from? That is, for me, the fundamental question.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll hear from Major Awich and then hear from Nicholas Opio before we hear from the listener. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break. Well, we're glad that you're still with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Reviewing the major events of the week with a panel here of Nicholas Opio, retired Major Paula Awich, Ms. Charity Kalevo, and Dr. Robert Ojambo. Before we actually hear from the listeners, let's first hear from Mr. Nicholas Opio and Major Awich. But Major Awich, you'll go first. You wanted to respond to some of the issues that came across from the listener, from the panelists. That's Dr. Jambo and Charity. Let's hear them now before we go to Mr. Nicholas Opio.
Yes, actually that is good, because I was thinking, knowing that they share the same views about this subject matter. After 2, I talk. Then after 1, I talk again.
No problem.
Yes, after 2 of them, I talk, and then after 1 again, I talk.
No problem.
So, part of the reply I wanted to make was that the doctor seems to say that people want a change, and that he knows what they want. But the thing is that the Constitution, in its framing and drafting, it gives a position that people should want a change. And indeed, it is always given. Somehow, you say that it is designed for Museveni to win. But I've always said this. If it was designed for him to win, then the designer must be very intelligent. Because if he can lose, including MPs in a whole area like Central, you mean this winning, they don't want to get it won in some particular places? Doctor, I've repeatedly told you that from Arua to Karamoja, the entire northern, during election time, Noop or any other position don't have even people to stand at the ballot paper to watch for them. But still you hear in Agago, Museveni has won with 70. You hear in Utuke, Museveni has, when there's no somebody, even to sign a declaration form.
Do you allow these opposition people to actually go and
no, but what I'm saying
organize,
they,
look for leaders in those areas?
Okay, they may not.
You don't.
But what I'm saying, if there was this urge for rigging, then why would we or NRM allow a rigging in Agago to 70% and in Utuke to 40% to 60%, even when there is no returning person, no person to declare a form? So this falsehood of rigging, we really, really have to come straight on it. That you can allow to lose in Buganda, and then in Agago, from Arua to, do you see that belt? Go to the election time and see if in Agago you'll find, or Tuke you find at a polling station in a village, and you say that there's a what do you call it, polling agent? Nothing. But still the results are brought that in Agago, Museveni has got 70. In Utuke. So this falsehood of an election designed for a winner, I don't really believe in it. Now, the other time there is also a comment, because this discussion is about SEC. There is also a question as to how SEC conducts an election when it is in existence. The decision of the party, and in the draftswoman or draftsman in the Constitution, is that it did not want to create a vacuum that at any one time the SEC is dissolved. Because a SEC is supposed to vet. Now, if it is dissolved, then who will vet the other? So it was continued, just like you can't have a vacuum even in the presidency. So the SEC which is there does vet people, and it exists. So we didn't see anything wrong with it, and even in the drafting of the Constitution, if somebody thinks there's any better way of doing it, then maybe you can either share with a party member or you join the party and you advocate for that position.
Lastly?
Is that what we're discussing about our internal democracy. When you put a law in place, you think you have done your best. But when you put it to test, you see cracks. And that's why there's provision for amendment. So we are testing our internal democracy.
All right.
It is good that you are pointing, but give us a chance. It is our internal democracy, and we are following it. At least I thank Opio at the beginning that we give NRM a credit, because we have tried, and we are trying.
All right.
It's internal democracy. It's our internal democracy. We would wish the best for our party. We are considering all aspects, including bribery. So give us a chance for us to try in our internal democracy.
All
And
right.
we see how far we go.
Let's now go to Mr. Nicholas Opio. Mr. Nicholas Opio, your quick response to what has come out of this discussion so far. I'm sure there are some loose ends that you want to tie up.
No, not really. I think that we are not debating each other's views, of course. We are also sharing our own views to the listeners, so they know where we stand, in the hope that they will provoke some sort of discussion in the public as well. So there's a moment for soul searching, even for those who are in the NRM. I met a couple of them. I sat at a bookstore at Garden City when they had finished their function in Kololo. Many of them were streaming by, doing last-minute shopping to go back to the village. And I met a couple of them. I met a delegation from Karamoja, and I had a discussion with them. And the question I left them with is, how would people from Karenga, how would people from Kotido really justify their support for the NRM in a state of destitution of 40 years of NRM rule? I don't know if you've been to Karenga. I don't know if you've been to Kotido. These were delegates from there. And I asked them, why are you really not asking for better governance? Why are you thumping for a person who has brought you thus far in this kind of state? And they were in shock. And the response that I got really was that, look, we don't have food. If we can eat, let us eat. And they laughed and walked away. And so these discussions I had so that people can begin to reflect more deeply. Because you can get a bribe. Well, will that bribe change your life? It will not. It might sort out your immediate problems, but in the end, the bigger societal issues remain unresolved. Whether you are a minister, if you get a heart attack in your house, your gated house in Kololo, or your gated house in Muyenga, we still must get you through this pothole city, make it through this traffic jam, take you to Molago, stabilize you before you can fly out of the country. And so it is in our own collective interest that we have a proper system of governance. And when we talk about this in the NRM, not that we hate the NRM. No. Major, it is that we think you can do better. Is that as a party in power for 40 years, we think that the dividends you are showing to the shareholders is really a bad dividend. Okay? The promise that you have made, you haven't delivered on them. You've issued a bounce check to many people in this country, who have to struggle for basic needs, basic infrastructure. That is the spirit in which we critique the NRM and take it in good stride. Sometimes it is good to listen and accept that, we make mistakes. Tell us how we can do it better and take this feedback in good state. Lastly, you talk about codes of conduct. The code of conduct is only as good as its implementation. It is like in Uganda we say we are Christians, but if you see the amount of unchristian things happening in Uganda, we have a Bible. Okay? We would want you to commit to investigating allegations of bribery from none other than your vice chairperson female, from none other than your vice chairman Eastern, from senior party leaders. You cannot wish it away saying, Opio, did you see? Commit to applying those codes of conduct and holding people to a higher standard. If indeed the Speaker of Parliament was involved in bribing voters with iPads and phones as alleged by her opponent, investigate it. If she was found to be bribing, there has to be consequences. Because if there are no consequences, that becomes the modus operandi in the party. That sometimes we let things go because it's in the broader interest. Violation of your rules is not in the interest of anybody. Hold them to account. If you do, or when you do, then we shall begin to take you seriously. Otherwise, we will think that you are justifying a breach of your own regulation. We will think that, like many government spokespersons, you are trying to cover up dirt as opposed to dealing with what people have unmasked in your party.
All right, at this point, we'll go to the listener and hear their views, and then we'll have an opportunity to actually respond to them. A number of comments that's coming in. I'll begin with Sally Isaac Keith. Is a NUP candidate for mayor in Nansana. Good evening. What we witnessed at Kololo was a shame to NRM in the presence of its chairman. I was on online platforms and on TVs, and I witnessed many categories, but what was seen was a nightmare. If NRM was serious about corruption, we would see many people disqualified. For example, Right Honorable Anita Among, Karangwa, that vice chairman from East ETC. We saw daytime bribery, which ended up even cancelling some slots. I think what happened they were trying to introduce a monetary kind of elections where those without money should not participate. I thank Speaker Emeritus Kadaga that she also talked about it. That's a comment from Sally, listening again from Nansana municipality. Then we have another comment. Good evening, and Kenneth and the panelists. In Uganda, we don't have a semblance of any political party. All of those so-called political parties don't have ideology, which has made Ms. Charity Kalebo to struggle explaining what we don't have in Uganda. Then we have George listening in from Bunga. He says, Kenneth, Ugandans who love their country, patriotic, must have a reason to worry for the future of our country. Following ugly happening at the NRM delegate conference under the watch of chairman of the party. It's absurd, it's embarrassing to see this happening, that these people are no longer ashamed, but rather they just there to spoil everything, to destroy democratic principles, and to make citizens to get fed up of elections. Another comment from Mawa Amaza. He says, good evening, Anderson and the guests. NRM doesn't have good spirit, not even its members. They only have spirit of selfishness and tribalism only. Just imagine our constitution was always amended whenever it closes the door for the current head of state. And the NRM forget about the massive poverty punching the citizens. Is we, the voters, to blame for supporting thieves, all the time pretending to have brought peace when they don't have peace. We have another comment from Kauka listening in from Mukono, who says, what happened at Kololo was an accident caused by those who don't listen to the president. He advised people to step down for others, but they refused to. So knee-jerk methods had to be used. Mukula saw it and avoided humiliation and will remain close. NRM is a reflection of the Ugandan society whose character has been exposed so that we get a solution. It was not far for nothing. Yet the president confessed that corruption has reached his backyard. If even opposition parties held a similar function, the same phenomenon would prevail. Another comment, the recent NRM internal process left many of us wondering the way money was flying in the face of the president who has always been condemning commercialized politics. It says it would be better sparing and switching the country's scarce resources to relevant sectors like improving on constructing schools, hospitals, tourism, development, rather than posturing to conduct sham general elections in 2026. Personally, I won't waste my time voting, yet the results are already decided through a do-or-die game. That is Ngabirano Tofa in Mukono. Another comment here, Kenneth, this won't affect the NRM party in Busoga region because most Basoga trust Kadaga than any other people in Uganda. He says this will affect the Basoga, NRM in Busoga. Then we have another comment, Okama Emmanuel from Tororo, writes in and says, as a senior citizen, it baffles me when I hear that Uganda has eligible brains in the offices capable of deciding deliberately on real democracy, but have decided to do nothing about the country's state of dictatorship rule, or is it that there is no capable Ugandan to occupy the president's office, that Museveni would not have, should stay in the office of the president? The benefits attached to this NRM government has made the few beneficiaries block democracy, using all brutal means while the citizens wallow in abject poverty and poor services. Robert Nkumi, Spectrum Xtra, saying NRM has values is the most laughable statement so far. NRM is an embodiment of corruption. Formerly, they used to be smart about it. Now it's done in the open, and the leaders brag about it. Then we have another comment. Thanks for the program. Charles listening in from Wakiso Town Council. He says, almost everyone, including the NRM chair, agreed that there is voter bribery. E.g., the chair talked about it and many others. Bribery is a crime according to Ugandan laws, but they are just talking about it casually. Culprits should be behind bars by now if there was a serious government. Unfortunately, you hear them swearing to end corruption. How when bribery is done openly with impunity? He caps it by saying, God save Uganda. Well, those are the comments that we are getting in from the listeners. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Ujambo. All right, let's hear from you, Major Wich.
Yeah, we had agreed that since my colleagues share the same view on this matter, I would talk more. Now, one issue Doctor raised about current cadres or cadres in the party who act, and yet he was giving the knowledge of preparing your bed and you should sleep in it. It's true that time and again, by action or inaction, our cadres have exited. And that is a matter of life. And that is why we have so many former ministers and so many what. But I want Doctor also to know, in this dynamicity, there are also cadres who come in. Like you know very well that the current speaker and deputy were in FDC. They have come in. So rather than talk about the cadres who are exiting, whom you think should not complain because they have been acting as cadres, have you ever also posted your mind that even Dr. Robert, who is now holding this view, tomorrow will be a cabinet minister and I will change, or I will keep quiet? So in other words, I'm saying the critical nature on the current cadres should also be held in view with the current critical charity who will come tomorrow. And I've jokingly told my friends that you talk with me slowly because this side we are holding this view. Tomorrow you will be holding my view. So what will you say? So it's really that balancing. The exit and the income are the same. In fact, the incoming are higher. The incoming are higher. So you talk of those who exit as if the injustice or the suffering is on this side. But there are those who come, who were actually yesterday bitter or even sharper in criticisms than now. So I think that talking that is kind of an intimidation or a psychological threat to our current cadres that please hold your breath, otherwise tomorrow it is you. Then how about those who are coming? I would also say the same thing, that you also abuse me moderately because tomorrow you will be with me. Tomorrow you will also be with me. The same you are saying that you be careful because tomorrow when you go, you will go. I'm also saying please talk a bit softly on me because tomorrow you will also be a cabinet minister. We have seen many. I just wanted that comment. Now,
been co-opted.
now, there's also a comment about the party sitting in cabinet. I'm saying this because I cognizant of the fact that Nicholas says the discussion shouldn't be arguing each other's opinion. But you see, when you're in my position and all the points seems to be pointing at your side, you have no option than to reply. Nicholas knows that in law, paragraphs in affidavit which is not replied to.
Not rebutted. It's an admission.
Paragraph which is not rebutted is an admission. So if you expect to say this, and I should go ahead and leave it, but talk about the fishing in Lake Victoria, and because then it wouldn't. I would be doing injustice to my party. Paragraphs not rebutted are presumed to be an admission.
Sometimes good lawyers say, I leave it to the good judgment of the judge.
About the rules that we put in the code of conduct, the prohibitions, is our rules, and we struggle to do. Some of us have actually argued that it should be followed to the letter. It is our rules, we put it there for a purpose, and we really want to see it enforced.
So, right. Yeah. Right. Charity, let's hear your closing remarks as we move towards the end of this discussion.
I think the issues have been nailed for me by Nicholas, that as we reflect on Uganda as a country, I did quote for you Article 17E. Every Ugandan must be able to defend this country. Why? Because a day is coming when we all will be crying about an issue. There are those who cry about potholes. There are those who are in schools right now bribing their way. You know, they pay money to get marks, and then they walk out of there saying they have degrees and they are empty heads wherever they go. There are those who... we have really degenerated and embraced evil as a country. Even the delegates that did accept this money at the end of the day and then walked away, like he said, you will not benefit much from that bribe that you took or the money that you received, because after all, after a week or two, you'll be back to your status quo. So what is better is for us to focus as a country What do we want? How do we get out of where we are? We need good governance, we need good leaders, we need people of principle, we need people of value, and we need political parties that espouse the vision and the spirit of the 1995 Uganda Constitution.
Dr. Jambo.
Yeah, I think as colleagues here agreed earlier, it is good that NRM has accepted to try a pseudo-democracy. And in this pseudo-democracy, they have really exposed certain things in our country. As I said at the beginning, we don't say these things because we hate NRM or anybody in this country. But we said them because whatever they do affect us. And I think we have a right to say, please, do things better. We want better. This business of telling us that we have helped you to do this, we have helped you to do the other, I think should stop. Let me also use that word of should stop. We are here because we are human beings who have inalienable rights, and these rights should be fulfilled by our leaders. If the leaders don't want to do the right things, history is going to teach them. Go and ask Kanu. Kanu used it to think it was a mass party. In Kenya, everybody sang Baba Moi, even in churches. They created hymns where they were supposed to sing God. They say, God bless Baba Moi to be alive always. I don't think whether he's still alive. In Kenya now, if you went to parliament, both in the Senate and in the lower parliament, there is no member of KANU because people got angry with KANU and sent it home. Go to Malawi, go to Zimbabwe, go to Ghana, go to everywhere. Those parties that were popular, the ones of Kenneth Kaunda, the ones of the leaders in Ghana, right now are not there. If they don't change, the only thing that is going to happen is that they will be changed, whether they like it or not. So we are just advising them that they need to be a little bit careful on how they manage society. Young people now are learning. Gone are days when people did not know what was happening in America, what was happening in Britain. You had to go to school to study what happened a few years, years ago. Now, what is happening in America today? I was just watching TV this evening. People are demonstrating in Israel. You couldn't imagine that in Israel, people could demonstrate against Netanyahu. So I want to say that NRM need to reform on how they conduct elections, both in their party and in our country. We need to reform on how we run government resources, and we need to reform on how we run our offices. These offices are not personal to holder. They are public offices.
Right. Very quickly, in a minute, we'll hear from Mr. Nicholas Opio. Your closing remarks.
Well, thank you, and congratulate those who have taken part in NRM elections. I hope their experience leaves a bitter taste in their mouth, as it has to many of us who are watching, about the experiences of bribery, corruption, and abuse of power. Clearly, what they have demonstrated is that those who have money can buy off the vote, and many of them have done so. I think that such leaders don't deserve public office. It is bad for the party, and by extension, bad for the country, because they are like termites. They eat away the core of your chair. You think you have a chair until you sit on it, and one time that chair will collapse. And President Museveni should know that that chair is being eaten by these termites of corruption that have now defined his legacy, that's now defining the NRM. It used to be whispered. It's now being played out in public. Unless they have the ability to stop it, that termite is going to eat up his chair, and one time it will crumble.
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum Extra. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for making time to be here, and the listeners for tuning in, but also contributing to this discussion. From me, the team in here in studio, wish you a good weekend, but stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90 because we'll continue with our quality programming with great songs and great memories.